One of the other things people inadvertently create is a collective investment scheme. So it's particularly where intermediaries want to bring in investment, they want to put it together, and they want to pool it and invest it. So you actually put it into some sort of joint account or common account, etc. It's easy to create by accident. Now, one of the examples of it's been created in recent years is an ostrich farm. Was found to have created a collective investment scheme and was closed down by the FSA on the basis that actually, though everybody owned the ostriches, everybody had their own ostriches, everybody communally owned the eggs. So when you got a baby ostrich, you know, it was part of a collective investment scheme. They're not always that much fun. But FSA are very active in schemes that involve communal investment. So they've been particularly active on land-based schemes recently, land banking schemes, where people buy little plots of land which are collectively managed. So easy to create by accident. You don't usually create one if you set up a company and get shares in it. That doesn't apply to all forms of organisation. It doesn't apply to LP, limited partnerships or LLPs, but companies usually can't be collective investment schemes, provided actually they don't open often this sort of fluid, what's called, they're not open-ended, which means fluidly people can come and go and get the value of their investment back, i.e. what's been invested in. So CISs, just broadly, arrangements with regard to any property doesn't have to be shares, doesn't have to be any conventional investment, can be ostriches, can be land. The day-to-day management is not controlled by the investors, and the property is managed as a whole, or there's pooling of contributions and profits or income. They're extremely wide, and as I say, often you need to be careful that clever ideas do not fall foul of it. Okay, other licensable activities that are sometimes relevant that you need, particularly with lending, lending even to some businesses can fall under the Consumer Credit Act. So particularly lending of amounts of 25,000 or less to sole traders or small partnerships. So again, you'll find some crowdfunding schemes do actually operate in lending. I mentioned Zopper and Kiva, which does sort of social lending. So what you have to do, though, is be very, very careful if you have a lender. I mean, Zopper actually operate in small business lending as well, but you have to be very careful that you either have a license or you don't need one. Deposit taking, land payments, you will find less often to be an issue. But deposit taking, broadly, if you take in money and then you use it in your business on the basis you will pay it back later, you actually have to be authorised to do that unless you're in one of the exceptions. And payment services, people sometimes take in money, hold it in escrow before they invest it, they actually dish it out as an investment, may need you to be authorised as a payment intermediary. So under payment services regulations. So these are things you come across less often. The arranging issue, the promotion issue, things, and possibly the collective investment scheme issue, you will come across more often as possible. 10 minutes to go, right. Okay, some of the things you are seeing at the moment. So the innovation you will see. Because it's not all doom and gloom. There are ways around this. There are different ways, I think, for most most ideas. There is seldom a one-size-fits-all. There's been an increased use of traditional structures. I mentioned the football clubs. So a co-op's a very traditional structure. Been around for a very, very long time. Trade unions were originally industrial provident societies, etc. People gather together, and as I say, if you don't dish out the money, but you allow people to participate, then you still have to register with FSA, but it's not a major issue, not necessarily a major issue. So other things people are doing. Some people, as I said, will bite the bullet and say, look, we are an intermediate crowdfunding funding platform. We will actually get regulated by the FSA. It will give our platform prestige, even though the rules are sometimes difficult to comply with and are onerous. There are possibly other ways that people have tried. So one is to work within the rules and have a funding vehicle, something like a PLC, which is, or it has minimum capital requirements, but doesn't all have to be paid up. The PLC takes in money, but it does so relying on the exceptions for offers to the public. So it doesn't have to be listed. It doesn't have to issue a prospectus. It does have to actually have the documents approved, even though it's not an FSA authorised person. It does have to have the documents approved by an FSA authorised person. Now there's a couple, and on that basis it takes in £5 at a time or £10 at a time from huge numbers of people. It dishes it out. They get a share of the funding vehicle, but they also get an indirect interest in the investee. So it's a way of possibly, it's not necessarily going to be cheaper than getting approved, but it is a way that is used. You'll find people like Bandstocks is one of the crowdfunding vehicles that uses this. There's one, I think a new one, which is a venture capital one called Crowdcube, which people may have heard of, which I believe uses something similar. But they all go on the basis that actually, even though they are not authorised themselves, they have to drag in an FSA authorised person to actually approve the website and everything that's issued. So other possible FSA authorisation, there's an easier way if you are an arranger, an intermediary arranger, and you want to actually be FSA, you want to actually take the FSA route. If you want to avoid direct authorisation, you can be something called an appointed representative. So you find an FSA authorised person, you enter into a contract with them whereby they supervise you, and you actually do all the rest. So you operate your business under their regulatory umbrella, under their authorisation, which will cost you less, at least to start with. Whoever you work with will actually ask for some of your profits, but it will actually cost you less. Other people have been quite clever. There is one, and I think it's called, I cannot remember the name of it, one of the music funding sites actually got itself authorised. It actually says these are bets. These are not investments, these are bets. So it's got itself effectively authorised as a bookmaker, which is actually an easier regulatory regime than any of the consumer credit regime or the financial services regime. So that's a little bit of what we call regulatory arbitrage. And otherwise using space within financial services legislation, looking for exemptions which are tortuous and difficult but actually are there. So I think those are the sort of innovations you are seeing at the moment, because I mean it is a live idea. And as I say, I think what lies behind a lot of this is really that some of these things aren't really doing anyone any harm, and the law and the regulation is something of a blunt instrument to regulate them.